going to talk about something very interesting now, and it is called Green GDP. Now, GDP we all understand, right? It's the most common measure of the size of economy, value of goods, services that the economy produces in a certain period of time. It is generally an indicator of growth. But what exactly is Green GDP? And how exactly is it measured? Why is it such a topic of discussion even with the world leaders, Bill Gates and the Prime Minister included? Shrishti is here with us in the studio to take you through all the details. Shrishti, tell us, what exactly is Green GDP?
Oh, very good morning to you, Sonal. So, like you've rightly said, GDP is a term that we all are aware of. It is an indicator of how prosperous a nation is, the size of the economy, but it doesn't take into account one very important factor, and that is the environmental concerns. The economic development of any country comes at a huge environmental cost. Any kind of manufacturing we talk about, it leads to depletion of the natural resources, leads to land degradation, felling of trees, and also causes a lot of pollution, whether it's air pollution, water pollution, or the waste pollution. So economists around the world have been advocating the use of green GDP. So basically integrating green GDP within the overall GDP. So that means it will take into account all the environmental consequences of any kind of development that happens within a country. And it's not really a new term. The discussions on green GDP date back to 1970s, and some countries have even experimented with devising a term called green GDP. Our research shows that China in early 2000s, they held these discussions. They tried to bring green GDP, but then it could not really take off because of political reasons. Another major reason is that it's very difficult to quantify the environmental damage. We need a lot of data, and it's often observed that countries do not really take into account how much pollution manufacturing causes, how much land degradation really happens. And that is why over the last let's say 2 decades, we have seen that countries including India are doing a lot of surveys to estimate this cost. India also started discussing green GDP and tried to integrate it, but it hasn't really happened so far. Several other countries like South Korea and the US, and as well as the European countries, are also having certain indices. They're not really green GDP, but similar to that extent. We spoke to some of the senior economists as well. We spoke to Ms. Vibhuti Garg. She is the Director South Asia of IFA, and she says that India is a leading economy, and considering the rapid urbanization and population growth which is happening, it's very important that we have something called green GDP, because it provides a holistic framework to integrate the environmental cost within the economic decision making, and will definitely help us reach the sustainable development goals, and especially at a time when we are really talking about climate change, and India is a vulnerable country. So definitely it gives out a signal to all the policy makers.
Right. So it's often said that growth these days comes at the cost of the environment. From what I'm understanding from you is that green GDP would give you what exactly that cost is. And putting a number to it, understanding where it's going, gives us a way forward on how much damage we're actually doing to the environment, and thus accounting for it, and then of course working upon it as well. So that's an interesting term out there. Thanks Shrishti for joining us with the very latest.